against it. Yes, ma'am, I do. The Magnets is own property on both sides of me.
Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rob.
Jerry,
We have, I'm sorry, we have people in our area who come from Keller Avenue and they transgress across the yards because there is not a fence there. They'll come up from the beach, and because they don't see a parameter there between our houses, they also will come through our yards. We've had vehicles, UPS vehicles, tear down our driveway because there was not the observance of, oh, there's a fence here and there's a fence here. That's probably somebody's property. So just to make it clear and safer for myself and my family, I was just asking to have that enclosure on the opposite side, same, like as like.
Ms. Bowles, if you may, I'm going to ask Jerry a question or two. Mr. Creel.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Creel, with regard to what we talked about during the appellant's time, that 5-foot easement that's granted to somebody because they build a fence on their property, if Ms. Bowles is, if we uphold the AHRC's decision and Ms. Bowles builds a fence, does that then cut off the rights of some other resident to cross into her property 5 feet?
From a LDO standpoint,
Yes.
no, it would not prohibit Ms. Magnets from being able to get over there. The problem is that there's a lot of contention between these two property owners, and whenever one has stepped over the property line.
Well, right, and that's what I don't want to discuss that. I think there's something else going on that's probably not, we probably shouldn't discuss here.
But from a legal standpoint, it should not prohibit Ms. Magnets from being able, or Ms. Bowles from being able to get over on the other side to maintain whoever owns the fence. They have that right.
But there would be no purpose for either one to be on the other side of the fence to maintain the side of the fence that they could no longer reach anyway.
Well, in Ms. Magnets' case, let's just say that some of those exterior boards on that side started to come out. She would have to have the ability to get over on Ms. Bowles' property to nail those boards back up. So, and that's very realistic. That happens with these kind of fences.
So,
Ms. Bowles, if you don't mind, I have a question.
Thank you, Jerry.
Just to be sure I understood correctly.
Yes, sir.
So the fence we're looking at here is on the western side of your property.
Yes, sir.
Did I understand you to say that you had no intention to put another fence a foot apart from this one, that you only wanted to put a similar fence or identical fence on the east side of your property?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So then if you were permitted to move forward, you would put up one fence on the east side of your property.
The east side by
You
Keller
already have a
Avenue.
fence here on, the Magnets already have a fence here on the west side.
Yes, sir.
So you have a fence on either side of your property restricting the foot traffic,
Yes,
if you
sir.
will, right? So you're only talking about putting up one fence.
That's true.
Yes, but Ms. Magnets has the permit to put the fence over on the east side, and I believe she told me it's already been installed.
And actually, the western fence on the east side is being delivered
So she has a fence in there
along
already.
the gates.
Okay, so it's a matching fence to, I'm talking, okay, I'll wait till we get to the rebuttal then, thank you.
Well, if Ms. Magnus does put a fence on the east side, are you moving forward with the fence?
Repeat, please.
If Ms. Magnus does put a fence on the east side of your property, which would be the west side of her other lot, would you be still installing a fence at that point?
I would request to put that fence on my property line or within my property line, just because I would like to be the owner of the fence. a fence in my front yard.
Do you have any, do you have any intentions of putting any gates or anything in the front of your property?
I had not. I was going to go down straight from the where the oak tree is over on the right-hand side.
I mean, in the future, right? I understand that. I mean,
From the wooden straight down as far as I'm allowed to go by code.
my question, I guess, would be the functional use of having a fence there now, so in the future you would have something to adhere a gate to. But if you don't have any intentions of ever doing that, that's what I was getting at.
No, I didn't include a gate, just a straight fence coming straight down as far as I'm allowed to go towards the sidewalk. That's it, like for like.
I have nothing further.
Ms. Bowles went through the AHRC and got approval after Ms. Magnus had already got approval. And when Ms. Magnus found out that the second fence had been approved, that's when she filed the appeal. So an appeal under the LDO stays all city actions until the results of that appeal come out, which is this meeting today.
Miss, well, Miss Bowles,
Well, you can stop it if you.
It comes down to they misunderstood the comments that I sent them because I was out of town the day of that commission meeting that told them there were two fences. But they didn't realize, they thought I was talking about the wooden fence. They got confused. If they had realized there were two fences, I don't think this would ever happened.
well, Mr. Raymond, is
Uh-huh.
is Miss Bowles on the AHRC committee?
Yes, she is. Now, she recused herself, she couldn't vote on she had to recuse herself on this case.
But did she advocate for her position?
Not that I know of before the commission. I know she did present the case at the hearing itself.
Okay, so
That's why she wanted a fence and present the design. But my comments, and it's still today, is it's not appropriate to have two fences back to back in a historic district. It's not appropriate anywhere. It's really a waste, but it's not appropriate in that historic district to have those two fences, especially if you're going to end up with a gap of a foot. You're going to end up with an area that's going to be almost impossible to
if
maintain.
this wasn't appropriate, and in my opinion, when somebody recuses themselves, I don't believe it's appropriate for them to be in any part of the discussion at all.
Well, they are the
Well,
applicant.
Let me
Okay.
finish. If this is, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but you said everybody was confused. Would it be appropriate then for us to send this back to the HRC and let them make a more appropriate decision based off the knowledge they apparently didn't have at the time?
And that is an option that you have today, is to send it back to HRC for reconsideration.
I'll make that
Well,
motion when the time is
I'd
appropriate.
like to finish the hearing. I mean.
That's what I said. I'll
got
make the
some-
motion
I
when the
haven't
time's
had-
appropriate.
I haven't had any time.
I'll have some comments.
So, Ms. Bowles, we're good. Ms. Bowles, I do have a couple questions, if you don't mind. So, but for, if this fence, I heard you say you want to own the fence. That's the issue here. You want to own the fence.
On the east side by Keller Avenue, yes, sir.
Okay, so, and I understand it. You got personal, people have personal feelings about ownership of property and everything, but I'm still struggling with this, and this is a process, but I got to say, I think there ought to be one fence, and I need to understand, what is a second fence going to do? So you're going to own a second fence. It's going to be a foot from another fence.
No, sir. Excuse me. I'm not talking about the west side.
I understand that.
I'm
But
talking about over on the east side, like my property is like that wide. So their fence is here. I want to put a light fence on my property line on the other side, I want to put the fence up.
But
I
she
didn't
has an
know-
application that's approved for putting a fence right there as well, correct? Right in the same vicinity, correct?
Well, I don't know, if you give me permission, maybe I could be
Well,
heard to it.
I think you do know. You know, that's not, you know, I don't appreciate you telling me you don't know. You know. And so
I'll
listen,
tell you what.
I don't,
The part that I didn't know at all from the get-go was that, number one, that they had already done all this stuff. I was not aware that she had filed all this, that, and this other, and I don't know that things are happening until they're being constructed.
All right,
I have no way of finding
and
out what's
okay,
going
so
on.
I'll appreciate that comment. But now that you do know that there's a fence there and that she has an application, she plans on building the fence, she had approval, now that you do know, does that change any of your opinion? You said you didn't know before, and that's why you were going to do this. Now you know. Now does that change anything?
I'm disappointed because of me not being able, for being a resident there for so many years, to be able to be, as a property owner, if I'm agreeing to having the same type of fence on my property, and I shall properly maintain it and won't transgress their side, I would just like permission as a longtime property owner to have the permission to have a like fence.
Okay.
And that's what I'm pleading for.
All right. Thank you for your comments. I'll just make one more comment because I know there's an idea that we remand this back. I don't think we need to get caught in quicksand. I think if the will of the council understands what is reasonable and prudent to do, we ought to just make the decision. We heard, you know, from Mr. Bill Raymond, his thoughts, and I trust and believe him on that. I think we ought to, you know, put it to a vote and make a decision to this and move on. I have no further comments.
Yes. If I understood correctly, Mr. Creel, Mrs. Magnus says the other fence is ordered. Let's say that other fence is up in 3 weeks. So you've got, this is the fence on the west side. You'd have a similar fence on the east side. I just want to ask this question so bad. If I'm on the owner of the Bowles property and I've now got fences up, why would I need another fence?
Because of that Part B section that says that they can come over and be on my property.
Well, they can still come over once they have a fence up, no matter what kind of fence it is, whether you have, I mean, according to Mr. Creel, regardless of whether you have a fence a foot beside it or 3 feet beside it, for that matter.
Well, I'm for impracticality and for aesthetic looks, I'm just for, you know, just having one fence, like the Pelican Cave fence. And as a property owner, I should not have the right to put a fence on mine. Again, they did this before I asked for the fence, for that fence. See, I just didn't know all that. But I'll still request it, you know,
But
because that's what I feel like I should be able to have as a
Yes,
longtime
ma'am.
property
But you
owner.
sit on the Architectural and Historical Review Commission, so if she applied for a fence, wouldn't you have known about that as a member of the commission?
No. Not until she appeared and said so or something, but I didn't understand that that's the way
All
it
these
was going.
applications go before the AHRC, Mr. Creel. When it was first heard, was Ms. Bowles present? Do you recall?
I don't know if she was there that day, but the signs were posted on the property to show
Okay.
that the meeting that was what the hearing was about.
Right.
So it was there.
And she could have heard the matter at that time, because this is when the application first came forward, correct? About how long have you served on the AHRC, Ms. Bowles?
Over a year.
Over a year, and this matter was heard how long ago? 5. Bef- Right, I would assume everybody get a copy of the agenda, just as we do for now. Okay, that's all, thank you.
I appreciate whatever you can do. Thank you.
Mary Bowles was present during the meeting through the HRC when I went for the fence permit. She actually had to recuse herself and sit out in the audience. So she was very well aware. Second of all, she's talking about running her fence right down by my fence. That's my property line. I'm a foot off my property line for the simple fact, I can't go into why the simple fact, but I'm a foot off my property line, and I need to be able to maintain my fence, and it makes absolutely no sense other than to be spiteful to put a fence right next to my fence. And I'm just asking you not to approve it for that simple reason that my fence, I had my permit long ago. She just applied for hers not long ago. That's all I have to say.
Have a question.
Does anybody out there who's knowledgeable, can you tell me how much a wrought iron fence like that costs per foot, roughly? If anybody's willing to divulge that.
That fence right there is aluminum, and it's $7,000. I have a receipt for it. The one on the other side is more than that because it's too small.
It's a little longer.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was just curious, thank you.
Go ahead.
Are we done?
Are we moving on? No. When we get to the resolution, you're gonna do that. Okay, being nothing else, this public hearing is now closed. And we'll move on to citizen comments, where we have 45 minutes allotted. Each citizen gets 3 minutes to speak. Please speak and state your name, as well as write it down, your name, address, and speak clearly into the microphone. Anyone on the left side, my left side, would like to come speak? Come on up.
Do I need to write this down?
Yes, please.
Okay. Andy Ostelet here for the Mardi Gras Museum. Just want to take this opportunity to thank everybody and tell you where we are right now. We are very close to being open. I'm going to give us a soft opening date of the end of August, most likely. We've got flooring is ordered, paint is going up. If you haven't been by, I really encourage you to stop by and see what's going on there. The contents of the previous Mardi Gras Museum that have been at Fayard Moving and Storage will be moved out tomorrow and Thursday, and to a location on Howard Avenue so we can start culling through all of that content and then start putting together the museum as it needs to be for a nice addition to Howard Avenue and a tourist attraction for Biloxi and the whole Mississippi Gulf Coast. So I just wanted to give everybody an update. I know that we're on the schedule today for the money from the counties, and that will be used for these renovations. And that's where all those monies will go directly toward this renovation. And we just look forward to everybody coming by and seeing it, because it's going to be really, really nice. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else on my right? On my left, your right? Anyone else?
My name is Christopher Moore, and I don't think I need the mic. But this is just a personal thing I want to bring primarily to the men. At the ripe old age of 48, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. I'll be 90 years old in January. But one thing I encourage all men to do, all the wives, all the sweethearts, all the significant others, be sure to go ahead and get that finger wave. I had the radical prostatectomy in the end of January 1979. The reason I had that physical is because I was required, because of my job in the Air Force, to have an annual physical. The procedure that's being used now are eons ahead of what I had to go through. But please, I was told by a physician, other than my daughter, that most men will die with prostate cancer, but not from it. So please, men, you can have a productive life after prostate cancer, but you got to take care of business. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else on my left, your right, that would like to speak?
I was 47 when I was diagnosed.
Anyone else? Okay. Anyone on my right, your left, would like to speak? Anyone in the back? All right. If not, comments are now closed. Moving on to the policy agenda, Ms. Lucy, will you please read Ordinance A?
Ordinance to amend Code of Ordinances to address aggressive panhandling issues and revise licensing procedures.
I got a motion by Mr. Lawrence.
Okay.
Second by Mr. Glavin. Being a first reading, we'll move on to Ordinance B.
Ordinance to amend Section 1299 pertaining to cruise vessel license tax.
Got a motion by Mr. Lawrence.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Tisdale. Being in first reading, we'll move on to Ordinance C.
Ordinance to amend Chapter 19 pertaining to taxation.
And we have Glavin and Tisdale motion and seconded. Mr. Glavin, do you have any discussion?
I do have a few questions. So as it pertains, and this is for the mayor, as it pertains to our tax abatements, that's in this part, right?
Yeah, I think this is the structure of the 3.25.
No, we're not changing.
This is the 3 point?
No.
Okay.
This only deals with privilege tax, and we're just trying to get our ordinances in line with state statutes on business licenses. It has nothing to do with 3.2. The tax abatement was in a different section, and what we've done is just move that into a tax abatement section. The post-Katrina tax abatement is all staying the same. We're just moving it into a different section.
All right, so just for description purposes, all that, nothing is changing in the abatement process or anything like that?
The only thing we removed was maybe it was an earlier ordinance that expired on its own terms in 2010. So we're just taking that out of the Code of Ordinances, but the existing abatement plan we have is still intact.
Okay, no changes except for what you noted.
That's right.
Okay, all right, so on the 3.2, we're just putting it, we don't have that verbiage in our existing ordinance, and we just want to add it to it so it lines up. Is that how I understand it?
Well, I mean, the 3.2 gaming tax, this has nothing to do with that. That was a separate portion of the cruise vessel gaming tax, which was a first reading just now, but that was not, the gaming device was taken out. The 3.2, what we're doing on that is trying to align that with the exact wording of the House bill. Our ordinance had some different words from what the House bill had, so we're just trying to, that's the one we just had the first reading on. That was the 3.2.
Okay, that's all I got.
Mr. Lawrence?
Abide by the state law. That's all you're doing.
Correct.
Just making it correct according to the state law.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Mr. Tisdale.
Yes, it mentions, it says Director of Community Development is authorized to collect such privilege taxes on the city's behalf. Mentions an annual privilege tax on brew pubs of $200. Is that?
Yeah, the statute, the state, they have to pay the state $1,000, and by the statute, we can charge up to 50% of whatever the state charges. So rather than charging $500, we just put a limitation of $200 on that.
Okay, and is that currently how this ordinance reads, or are we increasing that to $200?
No, there was no fee for brew pubs. That's sort of where a lot of this came from. We were trying to calculate what to charge the brew pub under their privilege tax. We thought 500 would probably be excessive.
Okay, so this $200 per brew pub for privilege tax is new then?
That's a new from last year. That
All right. Any idea how many brew pubs we're talking about?
one.
One. Okay. Privilege tax on tobacco dealers, $50 per wholesale location, $25 for retail location.
We've already been charging that. It's just our ordinance was.
You're cleaning up the
We're just
ordinance a little
cleaning the
bit.
ordinance
Okay,
up.
so there's no increase there. And if you violate the privilege tax provisions, you're guilty of a misdemeanor. So really, the only thing that's new in here that's not basically being restated is just we have one brew pub that we're going to charge $200 for a privilege tax to operate in the city of Biloxi.
That's correct.
Thank you. That's it.
Can I ask
Sure.
why? Why would we take this opportunity to impose $200 tax on one company? I mean, it's crazy because this is the first time I've ever seen government have the opportunity to take money from someone and they don't take as much as they can get. But why are we doing it to one person?
Well, it says each type of bar or everything has their own special category that they have to pay the state. And for brew pubs, the state came up with $1,000. As a city, we can charge up to 50%.
I get that,
If
but
you want to change, if you want to lower it, that's fine with me. I mean,
why would we charge anything? Are we doing it to the other classifications? And if so, what are they? And why is this code not with that?
What's Gulfport doing? What's Gulfport doing with it?
I'm not worried about other cities. I'm worried about other classifications of brew whatevers that aren't classified as brew pubs. So this one provider that's here in our city, we're taxing one guy. There's got to be other similar businesses in our city that we're not.
Well, they have distributors. If you have, like what Rex Distributing used to pay, I think theirs was, might have been $5,000. I mean, it depends if you have a distributor. We don't have a distributor here in the city anymore. We have bars. We have stores that sell beer. Those have already in place and being collected. But for a brew pub, we needed a number, and we just felt $200 a year was fair. They're paying $1,000 to the state.
Right, so they're already paying a lot of money to the state. Well, that's a relative term, I guess. But my question is, are they paying any other taxes? I mean, they just fall through the cracks and they're not contributing anything at all to us? Like, my curiosity is, why did this is a very small niche. So why is it so important that we change text legislation for an extremely narrow group that consists of one entity? Like, I don't get how this even popped up, or why is this guy on a target, and why is it just this one guy?
No, we were just looking at it, and we looked at all the other ordinances in there, and it talked about selling, people selling property at the courthouse steps and different taxes. And our ordinance just said you can charge anything that the state charges under the state statutes. And I looked at some other cities, and they break it down by different categories of businesses because there's different statutes involved. So it's just trying to get our ordinances a little updated, just like the other one we did.
Seems like we spent more billable hours on attorneys than we're going to collect on this one.
Took about 2 hours.
So this is strictly that somebody has to brew the beer at this place? Is that what you call a brew pub? So they actually have to make the beer there?
Yes.
So the only one we have in town is the one on Bone Street. I don't know if they would, it's up to y'all if y'all want to cut it in half, it doesn't matter to me. Half, or you don't want to pay it all?
I'm not paying it. I don't prove
Well,
it.
no, I'm just saying, that's an opportunity we have, if y'all want to cut it in half or eliminate it altogether, that's up to y'all.
Yeah,
I'm asking y'all
I have
a question.
The thing is, if I remember correctly, we already charged tobacco dealers, correct?
Correct.
$50 to the $25. So under this ordinance, there are other categories we're taxing. It mentions brew pubs. We just never charged brew pubs before for a privilege tax. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
We may have other brew pubs that come in. 25 bucks. So if I want to continue to do business as a consultant in the city of Biloxi, I mean, if brew pubs get a break, I want a break. What do we collect off of privilege taxes a year? I know we just talked about it the other day. Yeah, 100,000. So I don't mind brew pubs paying a portion. And I don't know the location. When I think brew pub, I'm thinking inside a casino somewhere you got a brew pub. But this is a freestanding. Okay, so this would be on Bone Street. But there may be other folks. I don't. Do we know what Gulfport charges for Chandelier Brewing over there?
They charge 500. They
500.
They charge the
Let me add
maximum.
another little piece of useless information to the. I mean, out of the top 11 factors that become a significant city is brew pubs. If you have a brew pub, you're in.
So we're there. We're either on the way to being there or we're there, right? Okay, that's all. I'm done.
Jerry, just to be clear, so they don't pay any privilege. They don't, when they set up their business, they don't contribute. I'm sure they pay something, right? How much? Right, so I pay $25 for my business license. They pay $25 for their business license. They pay the state a considerable more amount of money for that. But now we should say, well, because they're brewing beer instead of coffee, they should pay us more.
$250 for the coffee people.
$250 for coffee.
Right. I honestly just don't see the rationale behind it, other than it's a way to kick someone on the side when they're running a small business, and generate revenue, I guess, right? I mean, that's.
Well, I'm getting kicked as a small business, as a consultant, right? There you
So
go.
kick them harder, right?
Well, I think I'll go have a beer and let them kick me one more time.
I mean, if we would have left it to say we can get whatever the statute would allow, then we would have to bill them $500, and, we did not want to do that. So, I mean, we added that in there, limited it to $200 to specifically use the discretion not to charge what the statute allows us to charge up to, which would be $500.
Well, the statute allows us to charge up to $500. The statute doesn't require us to charge $500.
That's
so, right. So I don't see why we didn't just leave it at the $25 they were paying already. I mean, if they're paying a $25 privilege license just like everyone else is, I don't see why we should penalize them for picking a product different than my product or Paul's product or Dixie's product. But
Well, it's just not like every other business, because tobacco wholesalers are paying twice that amount.
so let's lower it on tobacco wholesalers then.
Or let's raise everybody's to 100.
In compliance with our, rules and so forth, would they take any more time or money to make sure that they're in line with our ordinance than a consultant or a coffee shop?
Drop to 200.
Is there a little bit more regulations and those kinds of things that we'd have to pay attention to, so there's some justification for a little bump in that? I think there is justification for that, and it's reasonable. Right.
We'll do that.
Can I call for the question?
No, I'm gonna make an amendment to that and just put $25, like all the other $25 fees.
Well, you don't have to do anything then.
So make it $25, not 200. So I'd like to amend that to make it $25, not 200.
Well, I think
No, you don't have to do anything. You already got $25.
striking 200 out of this
Right.
section, correct? That would accomplish the $25.
We need to make a change into the laws.
I'm sorry, Peter, is that correct? Strike the 200, if the intent,
Eliminate the 200.
if the intent of his motion is, well, to clean up the rest of the language.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Right, so in order to make it the $25, which is what George's intent is, wouldn't we just strike the 200 from this code?
Yes.
All right, so the motion would be to strike the $200.
Yeah.
All right, so we have an motion to amend and strike out $200. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Dimming. All in favor of the amendment? Unanimous vote. Now, can we vote on the ordinance as a whole, as amended?
Amended.
All in favor? Unanimous vote. We'll move on to ordinance
That's
D.
right. No controversy.
Ordinance for a master plan for Biloxi Lodging LLC.
Previously moved by Mr. Lawrence and seconded by Mr. Tisdale. Mr. Lawrence, you have any discussion?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Creel, could you explain exactly what you're doing here? How it can help the property owners?
Okay. There's a couple of things involved in what you're going to be voting on today. Number one is you're changing the existing PDGE, which is a planned district gaming establishment, which was set up actually for Casino Magic when it was on this property. You're changing that to a PDHB. Since there's no longer a casino involved in this, it'll be a planned district hospitality business, which is one of our master plans. The second thing that's involved is that because they're expanding the footprint of what was originally approved there by the city council at that time, they're expanding the footprint. That's considered an amendment to to their master plan. So we're doing those two things so that they can move forward with construction.
Anything else, Mr. Lawrence?
That's all.
Mr. Tisdale?
And I'm sorry, it's the day for arcane questions. There's it says there's an existing 10,000 gallon grease trap for the sewer on that property in the description and everything. Who cleans the grease traps? That's a big grease.
Usually companies, they'll hire a grease trap company that will come by and make sure it's pumped out on a regular basis.
Okay. Thank you, that's all.
That's it? Anyone else? Mr. Dimming? Okay, call for the question. All in favor? Unanimous vote with Mr. Glavin out of the room. We'll move on to ordinance E. Will someone get Mr. Glavin?
What happened there? Everybody left?
Ordinance for zoning district classification change from RM30 high density to CB community business for property collectively identified as 1805 Irish Hill Drive and 183 McDonald Avenue.
Okay, it was previously moved by me and Mr. Tisdale. I don't have any discussion. Mr. Tisdale, do you have any discussion?
Yeah, these two properties are adjacent. One is like 4 separate structures that are used basically as short-term rentals. Behind that is a number of, I thought they were apartments, but in fact they would be and would be used for short-term rentals. Is that accurate, Mr. Creel? Right, I have no problem with that.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Unanimous vote. Brings us to resolution F.
George,
Wait, she's got to read it.
Resolution to appeal the decision made by the Architectural and Historical Review Commission to place a 4-foot black metal fence at 540 Beach Boulevard.
Do I have a motion?
I move it.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the appeal.
I'll man it back to
Oh, you
Robert.
want-
Let Robert.
All right, so you're making a motion to bring this resolution back to
Back
the
to the
historical
table, right.
committee, correct?
There we go.
And we got a second?
I'll second that.
We got a second by Mr. Deming. Any discussion? All in
Robert.
favor? All right. 4-1.
Who was the one?
Okay.
You got anything to say? Mr. Glavin?
This is to put it back to the planning commission?
No, the historical.
AHRC.
To the ARC?
Right.
The HRC, Mr. Raymond said they weren't properly informed of the issue when they
Yeah.
made that decision, so.
Yeah, okay. I'm okay with it.
That's a 5-0.
So you're voting for it? Okay, so that's 5-0. Moving on to Resolution G.
Yeah.
Resolution granting minor subdivision plat approval for property located at 5237 Eden Place.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Glavin. Discussion, Mr. Tisdale?
Nothing.
Mr. Glavin?
Nope.
Mr. Lawrence? Mr. Deming? Anyone? Okay. All in favor? Unanimous vote. Brings us to Resolution H.
Resolution granting minor subdivision plat approval for property identified as 9066 North Oaklawn Road.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale.
Second.
Second by Mr. Glavin. Any discussion, Mr. Tisdale?
None.
Mr. Glavin?
Nope.
Anyone else? All in favor? Unanimous vote. Brings us to Resolution I.
Resolution, for an application request for a conditional use to allow the establishment of a bed and breakfast for property identified as 125 Rue Magnolia.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale.
Second.
Second by Mr. Glavin. Any discussion, Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, I understand this is roughly across or close to the entrance to Mary Mahoney's there off Rue Magnolia, just north of the old Magnolia Hotel. And the house is being renovated, and so anyway, I was there at the Planning Commission. I just think it's a good project and a good location, and I think we'll do a good job with it. That's all.
Mr. Glavin?
None.
Anyone else?
God bless him.
All in favor? Unanimous vote. Brings us to Resolution J.
Ken.
I did.
Mr. Glavin?
Resolution appointing Raymond Skinner to the Biloxi Civil Service Commission.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale.
Second.
Second by Mr. Glavin. Any discussion, Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, Mr. Skinner's former firefighter in the city of Biloxi. Good fellow. I don't know him personally, but I know of his family. They're very reputable, as far as I know. And when I spoke with Chief Boney, just to get a little background on Mr. Skinner, he gave a good report, and I appreciate that. So I would urge my colleagues to approve his appointment. Thank you.
Mr. Glavin?
Mr. Skinner, you want to say a word or two? Congratulations on your recommendation. Thank you.
Perfect. Anyone else? No? All right, call for the question. All in favor? Unanimous vote. Congratulations.
Whatever consent stuff.
Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale. Second? By who? Yeah. All right, second by me. Any discussion? We'll start with Mr. Glavin.
No, I don't have anything.
No? Go ahead, Mr. Tisdale.
Yes, on item D, that deals with the Gulf Coast Restoration Fund grant for Point Cadet. I noticed that the match is going to use some of the port money that we get from the county. And I'm thinking, would we use a portion of that money from the county each quarter, or would we use the entire amount each quarter for that you know what I'm saying?
No, it'd be a portion.
Okay, that gives us a lot more flexibility. It mentions, it uses the word amenities. My only questions are, I'm thinking if I was a boat owner, I'd want high-speed internet Wi-Fi access.
Got that already.
All right, all right. And the second thing would be a camera, a security system, a camera.
Yeah, where's Larry?
I mean, it'd be great if we had something down there to watch my boat, which I don't own, but.
Yeah, but we're talking about 7, 8. Yeah.
Okay, well,
But
only
this is
other
serious.
question
This
I
is-
can think
you know-
of is anybody getting their screenings like these gentlemen said. So far, we on a roll. Okay, that's it for 4D. On 4E, we're asking for another Gulf Coast Restoration Fund grant, and it mentions exterior repairs are estimated to cost $4 million, which exceeds the funds available in the 2019 general obligation bond. This is for the Sanger Theater. We already have a grant of $100,000 from the Mississippi Department of Archives and History toward the cost of the roof. The city will commit $1.9 million of the general obligation funds to repair and renovate the Sanger, and then the $2 million, if we get this grant, would provide the $4 million to do the exterior. I'm assuming this $4 million would cover the roof and the fly tower, weatherproof all the exterior walls. Would that include HVAC system as well?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, it would. What about exterior lighting and signage?
I'm not sure what's in. Yes. What do you say, Christy?
Yes.
We didn't talk about the exterior lighting and signage. We only talked about weatherproofing, but more than likely that would be enough money to cover that.
Right.
We did build a little bit of contingency in there to make sure we got everything.
And although we're not talking about the interior, I'm thinking in this day and age with digital whatever, my first thought is if we end up moving forward and really doing a good job with the Sanger on the exterior, on the interior, and make it weatherproof, some of these groups that can come in and start raising funds to redo the interior. But I'm also thinking digitally, I would imagine there's a lot of things dealing with sound, music, lighting. So is somebody taking into account that we might want to have some kind of digital something or other?
Let me give you an update on, since, you know, we've I'm not sure when the deadline on the RFP, but we've had tremendous response to about 4 groups that I've met with actually in the Sanger, talking about from the people who operated the Sanger in New Orleans to folks in Alabama, the Legends and some of the other, but there's you know, there are some great things that can come of it, is what they're seeing. So this is, you know, this is the beginning. You know, what we were encouraged to seal the envelope, and you know, I've heard a high estimate of you know, we could really put $15 million to, you know, to do the thing, $15 million inside it to, of course, expand it. But I mean, the expectation, you know, we've had a tremendous response, and the 100,000 mentioned from the state could grow. And you know, the whole pie is what we're trying to put together. So I'm extremely excited about the possibilities. What is the official? I'm sure at least 3 people will be submitting responses to the RFP, but they're going to be asking for more time to you know, nail it down. The latest being, you know, historic tax credits, new market tax credits, and some of these other things that can be packaged up. So we're really encouraged with that.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why we tabled it, was to allow you more time.
That's right.
And I know that probably half of that time has run already, but
I think it's coming.
But we're looking for resources, and
Right.
apparently some
That's
folks are.
That's
are
one of the
going.
executive session items. We're going to sort of share some more of the details. I mean, as far as leasing,
Are we going into executive session today?
not right now, but in a little bit.
Okay, I'm learning something with each item here. Okay,
Can we stay on that for a second?
sure we can.
All right, on E, the the purpose, we do have groups that are coming on board, and a lot of them are suggesting a partnership with us to contribute both assets and resources, capital assets and resources. So this, if we commit to pulling the trigger on this right here, wouldn't that be premature? Shouldn't we deal with these groups and try to find the best deal we can get to get them to contribute those assets and resources?
Well,
I mean, $100K is great, but we're still spending $2 million.
It still would allow that. This allows us to get the grant applications in place, even if the grant was awarded to us, but we had a better deal, we wouldn't have to accept the grant.
Well, let me ask you that but once we commit this 1.9 million, we're committed to this 1.9 million, correct?
I think it says if the grant is awarded, what we're talking about now.
That would be only if we accept the grant, Peter?
Section 3 says the funds are available or committed for that purpose should the Gulf Coast Restoration Fund grant be awarded.
Right, so even if they give us $100,000, we commit 1.9, but we're not even sure what the deal on the table with the other third-party groups could be far more beneficial than $100,000, and it could reduce our capital exposure for the city from 1.9 downwards. And shouldn't we be more prudent as to see what we can work out with these third-party groups before we commit $1.9 million for a what is that, a 5% match? I mean, or a 5% contribution?
No, it's a
No, 100,000 of 2 million is
Correct,
5%.
correct.
that one's already been given. This is a $1.9 million match.
Correct me if I misunderstand, but this resolution with the $1.9 million from the city as part of that matching fund is only if we get the grant. If we don't get the grant, all bets are off, correct?
They've also told us even if the grant is awarded, they still are open to public-private partnerships. That even if we get this grant, there's still other money that's going to need to be done, and there's still other, there's enough tax credit that's still in the interior that it's going to be attractive in any event.
Right. All this does is allow us to move forward and try and get another revenue source in here for this project. That's all we're doing is applying for a grant.
But this $2 million that we're attempting to receive from the state, that's
1.9.
1.9, but there's also another 100,000 in there, correct?
That's already been awarded.
We've already received that.
That's correct.
So speaking of partnerships and whatnot, I spoke briefly with a lady, and I'm going to ask her if she would like to come up and speak about her idea and just to give us ideas of maybe making a partnership. Sure. Come on up, Miss Becca. Miss Becca Vanderford.
All right, thank you. I appreciate you giving me a moment of your time. As Dixie stated, I'm Becca Vanderford, and I'm here mostly because of the Sanger Project. I represent one of the companies that did respond to the city's RFP. There are several proposals on the table, as they've stated. I do believe that keeping as much of Biloxi's history alive and rehabilitating these structures are important. Also, I feel like, unfortunately, sometimes, such as with the Sanger, a lot is done as far as looking into studies and looking into different grants and tabling ideas, instead of moving forward with the rehabilitation and being able to actually start making revenue for the city. I feel like that's really important that we should do instead of waiting and not working on these proposals. That I'm basically here today hoping that the city can go ahead and start in those negotiations. Whoever's proposal that may be it our company or another company, I just feel like that's really important so that we can start rehabilitating this gem of the coast and also start creating revenue now instead of us putting grants out there and waiting to see if we get them and waiting to start on these proposals. Our proposal specifically is to restore the building to its historical state. We would also be opening it in phases so that we could instantly start creating jobs along with revenue for the city and stimulate this local economy versus waiting for grants and getting stuff fixed before we start. We actually have a proposal that we do intend to pursue public and private partnerships with the city and nonprofits. We're not currently asking for any bond funds. We're all local business owners who are going to be putting our own funds in as well. So my partner and I are just excited to actually get negotiations started and try to create this revenue for the city. So we're hoping that it not be put off and tabled again and wait for grants to come through before we can actually start creating that said jobs and revenue.
So we've received the 5% grant versus the 2 million or whatever. So we're
This is a totally different revenue source.
right. So we have 1.9 that we're committing because we've already received the 1, correct? If we were to move forward with this grant proposal, would that slow or hinder negotiations with third parties for public-private discussions?
No, I think if we reach some deal before the grant was awarded, I think we just let the grant people know it's not needed. So it's not going to slow anything down.
So if we accepted the grant, though, that's a considerable amount of money. How would that shape the future of negotiations with companies like hers?
So, I mean, regardless, if at some point during negotiations, it's like, well, this thing's gonna work out, they're ready to sign on the dotted line, call Jackson, cancel that grant. That's all we gotta do, come before the council, we'd rescind that grant application, so that's gotta come back before us. Any deal that's put together with private entities for a private-public partnership still has to come before the council again. Okay, that's it.
What my question was, I guess, and I didn't state it as articulately as maybe I should have, what are we alienated from doing with this grant? That's a considerable amount of money. If we're going to be able to get it from a third party doesn't cost a private entity, and it doesn't cost the bottom line for the city of Biloxi.
But
We need to apply. It's not going to be awarded in the next week or the next month. I mean, there still needs to be decisions made about the immediate concern of the roof and fixing some of the upper deck. I mean, we've not dealt into a lot of the proposals. If the proposal is they want to start putting up $2 million to start working on the roof next week,
So at the end of the day,
that's something we would definitely consider.
if we move forward with this, we can still move forward with the other proposals and Ms. Vandervoort's proposal.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So,
Any more discussion?
I'm sorry, yes, and the deadline has already passed for the RFPs. Does that mean you are going to start negotiations with one of those proposals immediately?
We're gonna discuss that in executive session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I still have
Go ahead.
another one. On item 4H, this deals with the Coon Street water tank. Basically, we're bringing this back up online and reconditioning the water tank, and then we're going to turn it over to a contractor to maintain. I just noticed that there will be an additional expense as part of the maintenance every year on this water tank of roughly $49,000. So that's something else we got to budget through water and sewer as an annual cost, right? Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Deming, got anything you'd like to discuss?
No, I'm in opposition to aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Going back to H, the 430,000, what are you actually doing? You're doing a whole tank inside out? It's supposed to be like 143,000 for 3 years.
Tracy Firmly, Utility Services Supervisor at Solutions. So the question is, it's a total interior and exterior renovation of that water storage tank, and spread that cost over 3 years, and then a maintenance program so that it's maintained in it, as long as you stay under that contract, to keep it in top-notch shape. Yeah, well, since Katrina, the other one was built, and its capacity, you're growing on the east end of Biloxi, and that's pressure, storage capacity, fire protection, all those things.
Have you been through this tank? I mean, this tank's
Yes.
gonna be functionable?
That's right. Yes, we've
And
done
what
an
is it?
inspection on the
Yeah.
tank.
And we're paying $49,000 a year for you to maintain it?
So that includes annual maintenance as well as future renovations. The upfront money cost is the renovations you're doing now. Then from that point forward, we renovate normally on about a 10-year exterior and about a 14-year interior, so that pays for that. So that it's maintained, similar to what you did at Porter Street, Superior, some of the other tanks that you've done here back in the fall.
So if I could restate that, basically, it's, as George mentioned, I failed to mention that, it's $143,000 and some change each year for 3 years. It's $430,000.
Correct.
To redo the tank. Thereafter, it's $49,000 a year to maintain and renovate if
That's right.
necessary.
That includes future renovations.
Gotcha.
It's like health insurance at that point, or a heart attack. You're going to have one. You know you're going to need one. That tank is located on the coast in fairly harsh conditions. And so that's future renovations at a budgeted price. Instead of coming up with $430, now you're paying $49 a year. You get annual inspections, emergency service, maintenance on the tank, state inspection reports, all of those things.
I'll tell the mayor, the rest of our tanks, do we have a maintenance crew like that?
We just finished Porter Avenue, it was a 1 million gallon ground storage tank. We did 3 smaller pressure tanks. Superior, ask me to call the names right now. We did 4 other smaller tanks back in the fall. We signed those contracts and all that work has been done. Here, it just completed in the last 30 days or so.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This here, I guess, is one of my pet peeves, is giving the Mardi Gras Museum $150,000 the county had donated to the museum several years ago. My problem is putting all this money into somebody else's building is that you're not going to stay in it. It's just a waste of money to me. You're fixing up somebody else's building. You're putting all his electrical wires. You're fixing all the stuff for this guy building. I mean, I don't know why we spend this kind of money on somebody else's building. But then we're going to move anyway. I know that. And so who's going to pay for the next round when they try to build it by the den? So we taking $150,000 of money donated to keep the museum running, which hadn't run over 3 years. And that's my problem. So, I mean, I just can't support that.
Anything else, Mr. Lawrence?
I was looking to see it. It is. This is another one that bothers me. Is N. They're gonna save so much money putting this up on the ground. No poles, no insurance, no time, no maintenance, no nothing. And we paying for this? To put this stuff on the ground? $1.3 million? It's gonna save them a ton, they're gonna save them millions of dollars. So how are we paying $1.3 million for this?
We're paying them $1.3 million because we're asking them to go underground for our project. I will say that administration, I know for sure Cliff negotiated and got this price down very low with their administration. It was originally 2.3, yeah. We did a lot of work to get it down. It's also very expensive because that's a main power feed. And this will actually be one of the very first, the very first main power feed to go underground in Mississippi. Because all that big transfer station you see, all that's going underground. So it's expensive because of that.
Yeah, but do you realize
Adds to the
what they
cost.
save? The power company will save probably 3 times that amount of money in the next 5 years. They don't have to do anything. There won't be any tree cutting. There won't be anything. There won't be no storm damage. Won't be there in Overtown. There won't be anything.
I
I
understand.
mean, I just think that this is something in their benefit, probably more than ours. I mean, that's my biggest thing. I mean, it's going to save them a ton of money. So that's the problem going on the ground with stuff we should be doing, but it's better for them than us.
Do we have any other, what other options do we have? Is there another provider that could put those utilities underground? Is there a disadvantage to having it above ground there on along Division?
Well, we're trying to get all the utilities moved out of the way. And if we keep them on the poles, that's more right of way we have to buy. That's
Right.
correct.
Right, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of options here. It's either
No.
you keep it above ground, you have the interruptions and everything, you go underground. I'm not arguing the point, I agree with you.
That's right, and this is already in the budget, it's been planned
Exactly,
for
but
from the
we
beginning.
had kind of this discussion, associated discussion about trimming trees, you may remember a couple of weeks ago, and I think what cost could be saved if utilities were underground. Well, it cost, as you said, George, it cost Mississippi Power less to maintain those lines, to repair those lines and everything. I'm not arguing with you, I agree with you, it's just what options do we have?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, George?
Yeah, on the last one, the 4 different sites for the 33,000, what exactly are we looking to it? If Neil Shape is gonna do, I mean, you listed 4 different sites we're gonna look at. Is that you, Walt?
Yeah, I think Environmental Historical Preservation Office has directed the city to look at various areas that got concerned, primarily down from Holly Street east all the way up to the point. We're going to do some ground penetrating radar surveys, potentially do some archaeological phase 1 surveys to see if there's any anomalies in there that may cause that area to be.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? All in favor of the consent agenda?
Exception I.
Unanimous vote, except Deming is against aye.
I'm gonna go against, I'll vote against,
And George is against,
the museum,
which one's that?
that's L.
L?
Yeah.
And George is against L. We'll move on to code enforcement. Mr. Jerry Creel.
Item A on the agenda, On and Joyce on Cunningham, 396 Pearl Street. This property is still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak in regards to Ann T. and Joyce Ann Cunningham at 396 Pearl Street? If not, this case is closed.
Item B on the agenda, Thal Doan, 395 Forest Avenue. This property is still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Tal Dawn at 395 Forest Avenue? If not, this case is closed.
Item C on the agenda, Maria Gesterek Estate, 274 Bluer Drive. This property is still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Maria Gistrek Estate at 274 Bluer Drive? If not, this case is closed.
Item D, Walter P. Levitt, 2503 Parkway Road. This property is still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Walter Levitt at 2503 Parkway Road? If not, this case is closed.
Item E, South Mississippi AIDS Task Force, Fernwood, 2756 Fernwood Road. That case has been resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Creel. Do I have a motion on the routine agenda?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale. Do I have a second? All right, I'll second it. Go ahead, Mr. Lawrence.
Walt, Keith, okay, give me the good news. I know we've been dead in the water. We've been dead in the water. Somebody gotta bring us some money.
This is the final draft of the audit.
All right.
have a motion and a second that the council goes into closed session for the purpose of examining the necessity to go to executive session? What, babe? Do I have a motion on the routine agenda? I mean, all in favor? Unanimous votes. All right. Now do I have a motion for the council to go into executive session? Closed session for the purpose of examining the necessity to go into executive session. Motion by Mr. Deming and second by Mr. Tisdale. All in favor? Unanimous? No. 4-1. Now do I have a motion that the council conclude the closed session and reconvene as an open meeting?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lawrence, second by Mr. Tisdale. All in favor? 4-1. Now do I have a motion that the council go into executive session? Motion by Mr. Lawrence.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tisdale. All in favor? 4-1.
What's the purpose?
For the purpose of potential litigation of next site and litigation in regards to Secretary of State and potential leasing of city property.
Correct.